Hi, intuitive viewers. Welcome. I have someone that I am so anxious to speak to. I've been anxious to speak to her for a while. So she is an intuitive, I would say she might, want to change the language a little bit, but intuitive dreamer. She's also a intuitive tarot card reader. She is I would say she is, so she has a YouTube channel and she's always coming to us from the future. So it's Ellie from Ellie Dreams Down Under. Welcome, Ellie.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so
Hi.
much for this opportunity. I love the idea of meeting with you.
Good. I'm so glad. Now, we kind of talked a little bit before, but I want to start kind of at the beginning for you as an individual, as a person. So start kind of when you started having dreams that you knew might be more than dreams. They might be something a little bit more. Do you remember when this first happened, or what were the circumstances around it? And also, does it run in your family?
Oh, well, okay. Actually, it might run in my family. My mother has dreams, but her dreams are different. But I'll explain those to you in a moment.
Okay.
The first time I ever had a dream that I felt was meaningful, actually, it was a deliberate dream that I tried to invoke by asking a question. And this was about whether or not I should relocate to another country. And I had heard just, by reading books or seeing, I don't think the internet even existed at the time, but by reading books or magazines or something, I had discovered that people can sort of learn a lot from their dreams and get answers to questions in their dreams. So I actually asked myself, should I stay or should I go? And I just repeated it like a mantra. And I got an answer in my dream. I dreamt that I was flying away. And so in an airplane. So I made the decision at the time to have confidence in that dream. And I did relocate to the other country based on that dream, which sounds a little flighty, but literally, but
It's really flighty.
it turned out to actually be a good decision. And it was the catalyst. So I actually remember that very first dream. So from that point on, it just sort of grew. And I often do now spend, I do pay attention to my dreams. I don't ask about everything because I don't know whether it can become a bit overwhelming to follow a path of life that way. But when something's important to me, sure, I do. Yeah.
Do you think because you asked the question, you got the answer, you listened to it and acted on it, do you think that opens something up so that it's now it's accessible, and it is kind of accessible to you? Do you think that by doing those steps, that you actually opened up something a little more for yourself?
Possibly. I think that with anything in life, when something is presenting itself to you, there are also other things, other evidence that's presenting itself. So you sort of, one of the reasons why I trusted in the dream is because I think perhaps over the years I had encountered other examples of things where I felt that um, my instinct or the messages that I was getting from myself in some way, not knowing where they originated from, they were guiding me through something. I actually, when I was very, 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 very young, this is just I actually was very young. I must have been about 8.
Oh, wow.
I remember watching a television commercial. Now, I'm very doggy, so I think everyone who's ever seen my channel knows I'm very doggy. But I
Me
saw this.
too.
Yeah, good. Oh, that means we're good people. Good.
And so are my viewers, so they'll love that.
I saw this TV commercial for, I don't even know if it was laundry detergent or floor cleaner, or it was some kind of a cleaning detergent. And it was a woman who had just cleaned the house and she was looking at a beautiful sparkly floor or something. And then her husband and her kids and the dog came running into the house, and the dog was first. And the dog was a black and white collie who was filthy. And he shook all over. Yeah, this is the TV commercial. He shook all over the house, and the kids were filthy. They'd been playing football or something. And she goes, "Oh, well, start again, And so now she had to start again and clean the house again. And the commercial itself was not that important, but the collie, the dog, when he came running in, I remember turning to my mother and saying, "That's my dog." And she goes, "What are you talking about? That's my dog." I always knew that that was my dog. Well, years later, I accidentally ended up with a puppy that was the spitting image of that dog. And I've always wondered whether that was me as a child having that very first instinctive understanding that something was going to happen. And so that's the earliest memory that I remember.
Interesting. And that is so interesting, because I think, I've talked to a few other psychics or intuitives, and a lot of times, and I myself had a young experience like that, or not like that, but a kind of a psychic-y, kind of weird, kind of intuitive experience. And it is, when you're that young, you don't have that filter yet. You kind of just, you just say it. It's just there, and you don't have that inhibition that comes later on. And so that is so interesting. And that's interesting too, that you remember that. And did it come back to you when you got the dog?
Not when I got the dog, but when I look back, because he's passed now. He lived his whole life and he's passed. And when I had him, over the years, I remembered, it just came to me gradually. It's not something where I actually just went to a house and came back with a dog in my rucksack on the bus, not even knowing that I was going to have him earlier in the day.
Oh,
and
wow.
So it was a very unexpected dog kind of acquisition.
Yeah.
And we were often described as a double act, because we were always together. And
Oh.
up until his very last hour. And so but it's funny that I knew when I was, it may have even been younger than 8. I was very, very young, and I remember insisting that he was my dog, and nobody understood what I was talking about. So yeah,
that is fascinating. And so I want to talk a little bit about your channel, but I did not know the origin of how your channel came to be. So can you explain that, about this kind of prophecy that you got kind of curious about or interested in, and how it led you to doing the channel? And were you reading cards already? Were you already doing tarot cards at that point?
Oh, well, okay. So my life of tarot started more than 30 years ago. So I
Oh,
had a
wow.
neighbor. I'm in my 50s, and I had a neighbor when I was in my maybe even 2021, something like that. And she taught me basic tarot, which I then was learning, and I never did, professional readings or anything like that. But I was constantly on a learning journey for
Right.
a few years. And then life took over. I would actually, while I was learning through her teachings, which is very similar to the tutorials that I currently am building on my channel, the same sort of method, I would go to a quiet place like a coffee shop or a pub and bar or something, and sit with a drink and just practice. But I'd always be available if anyone said, "Oh, what are you doing? Do you want to do a reading on me?" And I would just do an impromptu reading to help with my skills and growing the skills. And that went on for a little while. And then life took over and I got busy, and I just put the cards down and didn't think about them for quite a number of years. And then when I started the channel, I started at around about that time picking up the cards for myself again, and just becoming refamiliarized, and also looking at it from the perspective of the prophecy that I had been chasing, which I can, which is the origin of why the channel appeared. I back in the 1980s, I was waiting for friends to get ready, and saw a pamphlet sitting on their coffee table that I think had been pushed through their letterbox or their mail slot on the door. And I was just flicking through it along with anything else just to kill time. And it was a religious pamphlet, but I can't recall which religion it came from. And it had a prophecy in it about the things that would happen shortly after the turn of the century or the millennium.
Okay.
And it involved two men who would work together to undo the current world and build a new world. And that certain things would take place. And it was a little bit disturbing, but it was more of a giggle back in the 80s, you know.
Right,
And
right.
you'd kind of look at it and say, well, this is a load of nonsense, and put it aside. And I was surprised that I had put it to the back of my mind and not thought of it again. We went out for dinner, did the thing. I lived another, 20, 30 years. And then when Donald Trump was elected, at around about at that time, the prophecy came back into my memory, because events began to unfold that sounded very, very similar to that prophecy. And so I kind of began sort of searching my memory for the details that I could remember. And the more I could remember, the closer it was getting. So I began chasing that prophecy and trying to find out where it came from. And here in Australia, we have a number of fringe religions, like I guess are anywhere, that put literature through the door. I contacted all of the ones that I could think of, and I got to know their librarians really well. And surprised a few people when they'd say, well, I've not heard that one before, and things like that. And they'd actually go looking. And every religion in Australia had my phone number.
I was going to say, you're probably very popular. Getting calls night and day.
And it didn't really get me anywhere. So then I started searching the internet, looking for similar prophecies. And I found a little bit of overlap here and there, but nothing specific. So it just took me onto YouTube, and then I found people discussing things on YouTube that seemed to coincide. And what actually sparked it was there was a particular person on YouTube who had a dream, and he was talking about his dream, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. And so I contacted him, but of course I was one of a billion people who had contacted him, and I didn't get a response. So I thought, okay, I contacted another person. I didn't get a response. And I thought, you know what, that's it. I'm just going to create a channel and start talking about this. And people who know what I'm talking about, or they'll come, maybe, or maybe I'll just be talking to myself. And that's where it came from. I started to look at things in the way that I knew how, by asking dream questions and by looking at the cards, and sort of it reintroduced me to the cards that I had put down so many years ago, and also created this channel that, is a big surprise to me.
It's a big surprise. Well, and then I kind of that. So you start the channel, and I talked a little bit with you before about how I find how interesting your channel is from the first go, because you're so disciplined in the way you introduce yourself, you introduce what you're doing, you talk about the question, you tell what you know about, so people know what you actually know about it first, and what you don't know, you have no idea. And then you read, and you always do what the card means upright, what it means reverse. If it's reverse, you say what it means upright. And so what led you to do it in that way? Did you decide to do it that way? Did it kind of just unfold that way? What made you decide to do it that way? I love the style, so I just wonder.
I think this is where my super uber califragilistic sort of analytical side of me comes out, because as much as I rely on instinct and intuition, I have a really I have a very strong analytical side that I'm really annoying, actually.
Things to death, huh?
If we ever were to disagree, I'd know exactly what you were thinking, and I can tell you exactly why in absolute detail.
Oh, wow.
Really,
Okay.
really, really frustrating. No, I'm not that talented, but I am that detailed. And so
Right.
one thing that I find really frustrating is when someone is trying to explain why explain that something is so.
Hmm.
If I'm watching them and I can't connect the dots, then I lose confidence in their message. And so
Hmm.
for me, I try to remind the people who are viewing my videos that this is not, it's not, I'm not um, particularly special in any way other than the fact that I have a relationship with the cards that I've put down and I'm reading what they say. And in order for me to credibly understand their message, the cards have to mean the same thing every time.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I'm really injecting my own um, opinion or viewpoint or perspective into this subjective discussion of a particular card. So, one of the reasons why I will describe the upright and the reverse meaning is to reinforce the understanding or to reinforce the idea that this card will always mean the same thing. And that way, you know why I understand it, the reading to be the way that it is. And if I'm wrong, then it's an error there that's in the way that I've analyzed the cards, but the cards are always the same. So
Right.
it's just to sort of reinforce that I'm saying it because this is what I see, and I can show you how to connect the dots so that you can see it too. And that's it, really.
Right. Because I love it. I love it because it also helps you're teaching your audience really about how to um what the cards mean, what they, and I know that you're reinforcing um the idea that the cards themselves always have their own meaning and you're interpreting it. But for someone who doesn't really, I can read cards okay, I kind of know, but it's so nice because you feel so involved in the process when you don't really read cards. It involves you right away. You're part of the process, you're part of the reading, when you're watching it, and you're able to really be involved in it. I think it's such a nice way to do it, especially if you're new to the channel, if you're new to cards. It's just really well done. So well done, Ellie. I like
Oh,
that.
thank you. And so I guess you've probably seen those examples where somebody's making fun of me as I'm reading the cards. Have you ever seen those?
No.
Oh, okay. Because this is the thing. I have had some, and I just leave them in the video because I think it's all just part of being able to show that I'm the human in this scenario. I'm not from another galaxy. I'm just the human. And sometimes I'll be reading the cards, and I will say, oh, someone's having a laugh with me because they're actually saying this, that, and the other. But in the end, it all makes sense anyway. So the other day, I did a reading on, I think it was Ron Johnson, who was who's the Republican senator for
Yeah.
Wisconsin, I think.
Yeah.
And I had done a very basic amount of research on him, and his Wikipedia page had some kind of a problem with one of the links. And when you look at his personal life, his wife was listed as Ann Johnson, I think. Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, someone Johnson. You click the link and it takes you to an author in Britain who is married to a tribesman from Morocco. And so I mentioned this before the reading and said, I wonder if Ron knows that he's married to someone who's married to a Moroccan tribesman, because that's what the link was. Well, when I did
Right.
the reading, the cards were listening and made fun of me. And I start reading about this man who's upset about he's got personal problems with his relationship. And I'm thinking, well, it must be the Moroccan tribesman. And I've had a few examples like that. So I just read them literally. And if it comes up as something peculiar, I think it's because there's someone making fun of me. and knowing that I'm going to just read literally. So yeah.
Oh, that is funny. That is so interesting. And I maintain that, so that when I tune into people's guides, that they so often they have a sense of humor. I think humor is one of those things that is so well, it's needed on the planet Earth. But it's also that it's a magic ingredient that can get you through a lot, get you through so much. And so there is something divine in it, I think, in being able to laugh, being able to find humor. So that is so interesting that even your cards like to have a laugh with you.
We have a long relationship. I've had these cards for over 30 years. So
Oh my gosh, really?
yeah. And
Oh
I haven't
wow.
lost one yet. Not yet. They're still in
Not
pretty good.
yet, knock on wood. Well, so this, I kind of want to talk with you about one of the readings you did recently, because um, it kind of reminded me of something that I have been talking about on my channel, and I wanted to ask you about this. And maybe your analytical side will have fun with this question, because I want to know about what you think about this. You did a reading recently on Princess Latifah and from Dubai, and Britney Spears. And the link between them is that they're both kind of in situations where they are adult women, and they're kind of being controlled by their fathers. I guess both of them by their fathers, right? And so, and the princess is in a more extreme situation because her father's the king of Dubai, I guess. Is that what he is?
That's right.
And so he's holding her just, I don't know, at the castle, I guess, and holding her there in some kind of captivity to keep her from leaving. And then Britney Spears is more of an economic control, right? Her father has control of her finances. Is that kind of what it is?
I think it's changed over the past couple of years. The
Mm-hmm.
Queen Latifah, the Princess Latifah example, actually, what they have in common is that they're both adult women from two completely different types of societies and ideologies. So you
Mm-hmm.
have your Western capitalist freedom and democracy,
Right.
constitutional type of American adult female. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have the patriarchal, highly, conformative and royal, far less democratic, more of an authoritarian type of environment, but very privileged adult female.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as those ideologies are different, those women are in the same or similar type of hostage, using that term loosely, hostage situation by virtue of the fact that they're women. And it would not have been possible, or would it have been possible, to have the level of control, I guess, over those people if they had been men. And so it's sort of shining a light on how different or how similar the environments are, even though they're completely different ideologies on the other side of the world from each other. But in Brittany's example, I think the nuts and bolts of it is that her father was the all-encompassing conservator, but a
Mm-hmm.
few years ago he was taken out of the scenario where he could control her daily life,
Mm-hmm.
and now he only controls the money. So he was able
Okay.
to control everything, and that includes her right to reproduce and her right to she does have, there is an organization now that still has those rights over her, because it's not that she's being managed, she's part of a
Right.
conservatorship. So this is generally for people who are extremely unable to tie their own shoelaces and make their own meals and remember to take medication or remember where they live when they leave the house. And it's a very unusual situation for someone who is generally capable enough to make millions of dollars for herself and
Right.
others. So yeah,
Right.
and that's why it was highlighted in the Australian television show that sparked my interest in being able to do those readings.
Well, it's so interesting because as I watched that, as I watched you reading on these two women, it struck me that I've been talking a lot on my channel about this kind of shift that we're going to be moving into, kind of a raising of consciousness,
Sure.
basically. This is channeled information. It's not me, but it's like it's what other people have talked about in different ways. Eckhart Tolle talks about it in A New Earth. He talks about it kind of a raising in consciousness, and Dolores Cannon talked about it as the new earth. It's kind of, kind of changed form. It's a little bit different for everybody. I think of it as kind of the way we're moving now in the United States, how some of us are moving on and getting on with it, and other people are kind of stuck in that kind of, they don't want to have a society where there's lots of different cultures and different colors and different, they want to be this white man rule and all this kind of stuff. They want to keep this where it is. And so we're all kind of moving on because we have to. We have to move on with things like saving the environment, things like, getting guns under control, things that we want to do and that most people in the United States want to do. And so so this is also kind of moved into the spiritual thing where it's like, yep, we're shifting, and we could really feel it during Donald Trump, or the United States seemed to just be splitting in half. This really staunch, white men rule thing over here, and then everybody else kind of wanting to move on and do better. But when I listened to your reading, it struck me that I think of free will as a divine principle, that we're all able to, that we have free will. And I thought there is a segment of the world that really doesn't have that yet. They don't have it in their life. They can't choose everything in their life. They don't have that ability. And when I heard this story, I thought, I think that part of this shift is going to be all women getting free will, being able to determine what their life is going to be like. And when I heard these stories, I thought we're still in the grips of that not being the case for so many women, even women in the United States, even Western women, where we think we have all these choices we can make. We can choose to do what we want, but then there's this situation with Britney Spears, and I'm sure many women have this, whether it's a controlling husband or whatever it is, it still is there. And we've had more women move into the political realm in the last couple of years than we have ever. Here we have a woman Speaker of the House, and we have a female, vice president now, and still we're kind of fighting this battle. Do you think there's something to that there is something to, it's almost like we won't reach another level spiritually until all women have this ability to be able to determine their own fate?
I do. And I think women are one segment, but there are pockets. They it's almost like, those circles. What's that diagram? Actually, I'll just write. I don't even know how to describe it. I'll show it to you. It's these circles that all interlink. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. It's a little bit like that. You've got the women, and you've got other groups, and you've got other groups, and they actually overlap in areas, and in other areas they have their own unique issues. And I think that a lot of this has to be unraveled and picked apart and reset in a new way in order for meaningful change to be permanent and long lasting. But at the moment, the way that, I had a dream about 9 months ago that had a number of different messages in it that I've been slowly sort of injecting into some of my videos. And I actually have just recorded the most challenging of those messages, which hasn't aired yet because the dog threw up in the middle of the video.
Oh, no.
And that's the second time
Oh
she's done
no.
it. So I have to go in and edit
Oh,
that.
doggy. Oh
It's
my gosh.
a tight ship we're running here. And and this particular message is sort of about how we're all of these people who need to, all of these elements that need to sort of be resolved, we're aware of them, we're banging our fist on the table to shift things in a positive way, but then everyone else is banging too, and it's almost like lots of collisions, and it's the hard way of doing things in a way. So it takes such a long time, and there's so much awareness, but there also has to be transition beyond that awareness as well. And because we are a kind of we're kind of a world where we have to be heard to be able to move forward. We're still at that being heard part, aren't we? So we
Right.
have to get beyond that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because that's exactly what struck me when you read them, especially the two together. I thought that was such a good idea to do, because you're right. They're from two very different, they should be having very different experiences because of where they're from, but they really aren't.
Yeah.
And both are disturbing, on their own level. They're both kind of disturbing stories. So Ellie, this has been so fun. I have loved talking to you. I could talk to you for another 2 hours. So we'll have to do a part 2 at some point, because I know my viewers are gonna be like, oh, that was great. So
I may you next time, put you in the hot seat.
no, don't. Don't do that, Ellie. No. So tell people, if they have not seen your channel, where they can find you, and yeah, and anything that's coming up that maybe you might want to talk about, something you're going to be doing that is coming up that might draw them in.
Oh, okay. Well, my channel is Ellie Dreams Down Under. I do sort of a bit of everything. So I've got dream interpretation and tarot readings, and I also just talk sometimes about things that may be newsworthy. A lot of it's US politics, but I'm also looking at other things outside of that as well. And I'm very organic in that way. I'm often asking my subscribers what they'd like to see, and what they want to see more of, and what they want to see less of, and things like that, because I consider that it might be called Ellie Dreams Down Under, but it's only here because it's a channel belonging to the viewers who are interested in watching. And so it's always about watch this space. I kind of like to evolve so that I know that I'm adding in this accidental YouTube channel that I've got. I'm adding value to people of some kind. I'm not the most professional YouTuber out there. Sometimes I've just come in from doing the gardening, and you can tell because there's a twig in my hair. But we get there in the end. So
Well, that's great. And Ellie, and let me ask you one thing, just because you piqued my interest when you talked about this dream that you had that was multi-layered. You had lots of things happen in one dream. Was it your decision to kind of parse it out in little bits because that's the way you felt you should do it? Was it just that it was just too much, so you just felt like you kind of wanted to break it up? What is the reason for breaking it up into different parts?
it was a very, very challenging dream. I've had a couple of dreams like that, but this one in particular, it was a dream about Russia, China, and the United States. And there were messages coming out of about all three countries as they relate to the relationship with the United States and the US's relationship to itself. Russia and China, I delivered the messages in one video for each of those countries. But because the audience that I have is, I think, 50% is in the US, and some of the messages are really quite delicate, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to have time for them to digest so that I know that when I'm delivering them, I'm making some sense. But also I wanted to be able to contextualize them with actual events that I can say, well, this is an example so that I
Oh,
can get the
right.
message across,
Hmm.
so that you can understand it the way that I understand it.
Right.
And in particular, there have been some messages that are really delicate. And so
Hmm.
I want to devote a whole video to that particular message and things like that. So I'm up to number 5. The message number 5 is coming up in a couple of days, but there's more.
Oh,
Some are
great. Because
easy, some are
it is
easy, and some are
fascinating.
really hard work.
Well, and it is fascinating. And I think that, you know, Americans are, I think that the whole thing with Trump and how we almost lost our democracy,
Yeah.
that it was a humbling that needed to happen. I think, it made us learn a very hard lesson about how this happens in other countries. You know, it really was, I think it woke a lot of people up in a way they have not been awake. And it also it humbled America, and I think that needed to happen. You know, you can't really change anything if you think you're perfect. If you think there's nothing to change. So I do think there was this humbling that kind of needed to happen. So I understand you being like, it's kind of delicate. You might want to sit down for this. But I think the whole thing with Trump, I think, was it needed to yeah, make us a little more humble and a little more understand how precious democracy is.
But I think there's a lot of noise taking place now, and that's
Mhm,
predominantly the media is having, taking a bite out of the apple as well, aren't they? So
mhm.
everyone's having their say and putting things forward in a way that's good for them. But there are lots of examples of things going in the right direction, and I had a tiny little taste of that yesterday. It was such a little thing, but it made me so happy. I had a comment on one of my videos, from very brief, from a person who said, "Hello, I'm a new subscriber, a recent convert. I used to be a QAnon believer."
Really?
And I don't think she realizes just how much she made my day with that tiny little comment, because I thought, oh, we got another one. That's one less person who's
Right.
heading in the wrong direction. They're sort of enlightened. They've enlightened themselves and they're heading towards that state of enlightenment. And it made me so happy. It's such a little thing, but I think we are slowly moving in the right direction. But it's a big, clunky, kind of huge
Right.
world that we live in, and so it takes time, and it's not always smooth running.
Well, but that is great. That is heartening to me. To even know that there can be change with people who are so dug in to one idea that they can be moved, that they can be moved that way to move to a different way of viewing things. That's great to know. That
Yeah,
really, I would have been just as excited. So
it was very exciting.
that's fantastic. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you
Oh,
so much. I
thank
really
you,
appreciate.
Kim.
I know you were a little bit like about coming up, but I really appreciate you
I
coming
find it
and
I
chatting.
find it really daunting that people would find anything interesting about me at all. So I think, well, what on earth would anyone want to know about me? But
But
I've
I think
really
that's
enjoyed
what's
this.
so
It's been fun.
that's what's so endearing about you, that you're very humble, and you can tell that when you watch your channel, that you really do, just get right to work and give people what they want. And
I don't know, but I'll just keep going and we'll see how it goes.
all right, well, you take care, Ellie, and thanks to Intuitive viewers for tuning in. We will talk to you soon. Check out Ellie Dreams Down Under, and we will talk to you again. Bye.